My wife snapped. Either add me to your father's trust or I'll divorce you, certain she'd get half of his millions in court. I calmly said, "Go ahead." Let her file the papers and waited for mediation. Hours later, my dad's hidden clause made her lawyer suddenly go pale like she'd seen a ghost, and that moment, that exact flicker of realization on her face, was the instant I finally understood just how well my father had known people, maybe better than I ever had, and how he predicted this long before I even met the woman I thought I would grow old with. I'm Aaron, 39 now, but 38 when all this began, born and raised in Asheville, North Carolina, licensed electrician, steady job, steady life, steady everything, really. I used to think steady was a compliment. Valerie, my wife, 35 at the time, used to call it boring, but in the early years she meant it lovingly, or at least I thought she did. We'd been together 8 years, married 5, met when I was doing electrical work at the dental office where she worked the front desk. She had this bright smile that made you feel like she saw right through everyone's surface-level nonsense. She laughed at all my dumb jokes, called me grounded in a way that made me feel like she meant stable, not stagnant. I thought I'd won some cosmic lottery because she seemed down to earth, practical, someone who didn't care about money or status. I didn't have much back then anyway. Everything changed 18 months ago when my dad died. My father, Richard Doyle, was 68, and the shock of losing him still hits me some nights. He raised me alone since I was 14 when Mom passed away. He wasn't emotional in a Hallmark movie way. He was the kind of man who showed love by fixing things, building things, leaving small envelopes of cash inside my toolbox when I first moved out just in case, calling me every Sunday morning, even when I didn't have anything new to say, because he believed consistency was love. He owned Doyle Hardware, this little shop that had somehow survived both Home Depot and Lowe's, because people came in more for him than for tools. 5 years before he died, he sold it for way more than I realized. The man lived like someone who had maybe $20 in the bank. Turns out he'd been quietly sitting on almost $3 million. When the attorney read the will, I watched Valerie try to hide the way her eyes widened. I don't blame her for being surprised. I was stunned. But something in her face shifted. Something I didn't understand at the time. Dad left everything to me. Everything. No conditions except one. A private letter for me only. In that letter he wrote, "Son, your mother and I built our lives with our hands. I've seen too many legacies destroyed in divorce courts. Protect this. Protect our name. Put it in trust. Spouses change. Bloodline doesn't. If she loves you, she won't need to touch this." I remember reading that, thinking it was harsh, even unfair. Valerie had been nothing but supportive, or so I thought. Still, when a dying father writes you a final request, you honor it. So within 6 weeks, I met with his attorney, a gray-haired, sharp-eyed man named Thomas Whitaker, who practically lived in estate law. Together we created an irrevocable trust, funded entirely with inheritance, and containing an explicit spouse exclusion clause, so ironclad it could survive a nuclear winter. I could receive small distributions. I couldn't dissolve it. She couldn't touch it. No one but future children or blood family could ever benefit. I told Valerie it was handled by attorneys, and she said she understood, but she didn't ask questions then. She waited. At first she was gentle, patient even. Month 4 after probate closed, she started bringing up houses, big ones. "Why are we still renting when you literally have millions now?" she asked, and I'd tell her the trust wasn't checking account. Month 6 she wanted transparency, documents, access. "You're my husband. I should be part of this," she insisted. Month 8, she wasn't hinting anymore. She demanded to be added as co-trustee, demanded access for emergencies. When I explained it wasn't legally possible, that the trust specifically excluded spouses, she snapped. "So you're shutting me out intentionally?" I told her the truth. It's my father's legacy. He wanted it protected. She yelled back, "Your father is dead, Aaron, and I am your wife. I matter more than some paranoid clause from a man who isn't even here anymore." That was the first time she talked about my dad like that, and something in me cracked. The fights kept building. Her resentment simmered like a pot always on the edge of boiling over, until the night everything detonated. We were eating dinner, takeout pizza, because neither of us wanted to cook. When she put down her fork, stared at me with this cold resolve, and said, "I've been thinking. Either add me to the trust or I'm leaving." I didn't even blink. "Okay," I said. She jerked back like I'd physically hit her. "What?" "That's your response. If staying married depends on access to my dad's money, then we shouldn't be married," I told her calmly. And the truth is, in that moment, all the grief from losing Dad and all the disappointment from watching the woman I loved turn into a stranger came together in this sharp clarity. I wasn't choosing money. I was choosing boundaries. She started crying, loud, dramatic, almost theatrical. "You're choosing him over me." "No," I said. "You're choosing money over us." She stormed out, moved into her brother's place in Charlotte, hired a divorce attorney, a bulldog named Sarah Whitford, known for squeezing husbands dry. And she clearly thought she'd hit the jackpot. What she didn't know, what she couldn't have known, was that the trust was untouchable. In North Carolina, inheritance is separate property, even received during marriage. An irrevocable trust with spouse exclusion, that's another level of iron wall. She thought she was walking away with millions. She would be lucky to get $15,000. Mediation day came. She walked in looking smug, like she'd already spent the money in her head, maybe even furnish her imaginary mansion. Her attorney wore the kind of expression lawyers get when they assume they're about to steamroll a case. But Thomas was there too, calm, unbothered, like a man holding a royal flush and deciding whether to be polite or let the other player embarrass themselves. We sat. Thomas slid forward the financial disclosure. Joint checking, $9,200. My personal savings, $14,000. My truck, half marital, half premarital. Total marital estate, maybe around $23,000. Her attorney blinked. "Where's inheritance?" "In an irrevocable trust," Thomas said casually, like he wasn't about to drop a nuclear bomb on the table. "Created 16 months ago. Funded 15 months ago." "During the marriage," Sarah said, her voice sharp like she thought she caught him. "That makes it marital." "No," Thomas interrupted with the smoothness of someone who had ended 1,000 such arguments. "Inheritance is separate property by statute, and per the trust terms, no spouse can access, claim, or benefit from the trust assets. Ever." He slid the document across the table. I watched her eyes scan it, then widen, then freeze. I watched Sarah's confidence slip into confusion, then into horror. I watched Valerie go from triumph to panic in real time. This can't be legal," she whispered. "It's absolutely legal," Thomas said. "Your husband followed state law and his father's explicit instructions." Valerie's face flushed red. "You hid this from me," she snapped at me. "I told you the inheritance went into a trust," I replied. "You assumed you'd be included. That's not the same thing." She turned to her lawyer. "We can contest it, right?" "No," Sarah said, already defeated. "It's airtight." And that was the moment the mask shattered, when she realized she wasn't going to get millions. She wasn't even getting six figures. She wasn't even getting 50. She was getting $15,000. 5 years of marriage. And she had gambled everything on a threat she thought would break me. Instead, it broke her expectations. She stormed out, of course, slammed the door, called me heartless, called me greedy, called me selfish. But I wasn't the one who tried to leverage my father's death into a payday. 2 weeks later she signed because she had no choice. But here's the twist I didn't expect. Her brother reached out, wanted to talk. I agreed. He brought text messages, screenshots, proof that 6 months before her ultimatum, she had been planning everything. "Nathan's inheritance is almost $3 million, she wrote to a friend. "I'll convince him to add me to the trust or threaten to leave. He'll cave. He's too sentimental about the marriage." She had scripted the whole thing. The ultimatum, the tears, the manipulation. She really thought I was weak. Her brother apologized. Her parents apologized. Even her friends distanced themselves when they heard. The divorce went through. She walked away with $15,250 in bitterness she'll probably carry forever. I walked away with peace. I bought a modest house. Trustees approved it as a reasonable investment. I kept working, kept living, kept honoring my father's legacy. 18 months later, I got a text from Valerie, somehow finding a way past the block numbers. I was wrong. Can we talk? I stared at it for 10 minutes, then typed, "No, we're done. Take care." Blocked her again. And for the first time in years, I felt something I hadn't felt since before Dad died. Calm. In the evenings now, I sit in my garage workshop, beer in hand, working on some small project, and look at the framed photo of my father on the wall. "You were right," I tell him sometimes. Because he was. He had seen the storm long, before I did. And thanks to him, I didn't just survive it. I came out stronger. The trust is safe. The legacy is safe. And the house is quiet again. Exactly how it should be.